I would describe my health like a relationship.
Okay.
Like, when I'm dating my health, I'm doing really good. You know what I mean? Like, I'm taking care of myself, and it's like first love, man. Like, all I'm doing is like, okay, when am I working out? I got it all scheduled out. All right, I got my meals. Am I eating right? And then when I'm breaking up with health, it's like a bad breakup, man. Like, it's a deeply bad breakup.
You're ghosting health.
Yeah.
Like, I've been trying to get in touch with him for 3 weeks, and he's
not man. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm trying to missing my phone calls, you know what I mean? Like, that's the way I would describe my health in my lifetime.
One thing I've found to be universally true is that pretty much everyone wants to be healthy. Most of us struggle with the maintenance of healthy habits. We yo-yo. We go through periods of time where we're quote-unquote good, and then something happens and we slip up. What if it didn't have to be like this? What if we could learn how to develop healthy lifestyle habits that were both enjoyable and made us feel good? What if we could feast on good health? Hi, I'm Dr. Rock, and welcome to the Health Feast. That's Dr. Rock, spelled R-A-K, not to be confused with the Dr. Rock. I'm a physician, and I practice something called lifestyle medicine, which means I help people use lifestyle changes as medicine. So things like the food we eat, how we move our bodies, how we breathe, how we love, these are all very powerful medicines. So powerful, they can prevent and even reverse most of the chronic disease we take care of in this country. The Health Feast, this podcast, is co-hosted by myself, Dr. Rock, and my friend Tupotu Pellet, aka Po, who you're going to meet on this, our first episode. I do believe Po was sent in my life for a reason. Now, we only met a few months ago, but I feel like I've known him for a lifetime. We connected through a former colleague of mine from residency who now actually practices in Abu Dhabi. That's right, Abu Dhabi. Po was recently in Abu Dhabi for a reality TV show. What else? Set to be released next year, Revive follows a group of unhealthy Americans who participated in a 3-week lifestyle change immersion program that, you guessed it, took place in Abu Dhabi. And his local doctor while he was there was my former resident from training, Dr. Nicole Saranton. And she reached out to me to tell me about Po and to tell me that in 3 weeks he had made amazing transformation. And I won't ever forget, she wrote me how pumped he was to help other people. And what she described was what Po was dealing with. He was dealing with the reality of no longer being in an immersion in Abu Dhabi. He was back home where he works as a full-time officer in the Department of Corrections. He's married, he has 4 kids. So it's not surprising that he's found it challenging to maintain these new healthy behaviors. Well, I contacted Po immediately because I could tell there was someone super motivated to take control of his health and that he really wanted to positively impact his community. If you keep listening to our show, and I certainly hope you do, hit that subscribe button, you'll learn that I too have had dramatic impact from lifestyle changes in my own life. For some time, I've wanted to share this passion I have for supporting people to take control of their health. But I wasn't quite sure how that vision would manifest until I met Po. Po and I started having regular conversations where we talked about things like how we use meditation to build awareness in our life, how we dissect that complicated relationship we have with food, and how we can develop the right mindset around change. And what we quickly realized was that many people have these same struggles and these same questions, and that many people would benefit from these conversations. So what follows is the first of what we hope will be many conversations as Po and I continue with all of you on our collective health journeys. And along the way, we'll invite some guests, serve as our collective guides on how we can all turn our lives into a perpetual health feast. Today, for our inaugural episode, I'm going to interview Po, and then next week, he's going to interview me. And in today's conversation, we take a deep dive into all things Tupotu. We talk about Poe's childhood in American Samoa and how this shaped his early relationship with food. We talk about Poe's relationship with his body image and being labeled as a quote-unquote big person and how that has shaped his identity and his career path. And we'll get into Poe's struggles with his weight and his health and his history with dieting. So in addition to the reality TV show that he recently did in Abu Dhabi, Poe and I discussed his previous foray into reality TV, a 2010 show called Money Hungry, where Poe and a friend teamed up to lose as much weight as possible for a chance to win $100,000. We also discussed Poe's relationship with health and how his views and goals for his health have changed over time as he's had children and he's gotten older, and we touch on his thoughts about getting weight loss surgery. I'll also just note one big realization I had as a result of this conversation is that the universe keeps pulling Poe more and more into lifestyle medicine, and our meeting, I think, was just a further manifestation of that. I've come to love Poe like family, and what strikes me most about him is his genuineness and his ability to openly express his vulnerability. You know, Poe and I talk a lot about our intention for starting this podcast, and his intention, which is also my intention, is to support each other and to support all of you in leading healthy lives. I'm super excited for you all to meet Poe now, so let's do the show.
So, Poe, I'm so excited to talk to you today, and not just today, but perpetually for many years to come. I thought we would start. Well, I don't know. How do you want to start this conversation?
Let's check in with what's going on. Like, the mind. Where are we? Mind, body, and spirit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Huh.
where are we there? I think that's a good check in. Like just seeing.
Where are we in terms of our mind, our body, and our spirit? Okay, I
Yeah.
love that. Do you want to go first, or should I go first?
Go first. I go
Okay.
ahead. You go first.
All right. Where am I in terms of my mind? Mind is always wandering. My mind is always wandering, and I'm practicing. I'm practicing. I've been consistent with my meditation practice now for the last 10 days. I know because I'm tracking it on my phone, and that is I think that helps. I think that's helping. So
Mm.
body. Body is okay. I think I was sick last week or something. I was either sick or depressed because I was like sleeping 12, 13 hours a night. And I know, sick or I don't know. My kids are getting a cold or something, and my son is actually home today with a virus. And I uh, said I'm not gonna experience this. That's what I told myself. On Friday, I pushed myself, and I went for a run, even though I was really tired. I went for a run, and actually, during that run, it felt really good. And then I got home, and like within an hour or two, I was so exhausted. I went straight to bed, and I was like, "What is going on?" And so the next day, I did my meditation. I did an ice bath, and which I do. I have an ice bath in my backyard, and so I do that with some regularity, although I haven't been recently. But and so when you get away from a habit like that,
It's harder to get
the
back in
barrier, yeah, there's a bigger barrier to going back to it. You're like, oh, I don't want to go back in that cold water. But then I was like, you know what? I just need to do something different. And so I did, and I felt this. It was very energizing. And then I had dinner with a friend on Saturday night, and I was like worried about that because I was getting so exhausted every night. But I felt really good, and that was really invigorating as well. And then yesterday, I kind of felt back to normal. So, and you said soul. Soul
or
is body,
spirit,
or
mind, body,
spirit.
spirit. But yeah,
Spirit.
whatever. Yeah, same.
Soul
Yeah.
and spirit. Soul and spirit are. That's why we're here today. That's why we're here today because our spirits. I think they've known each other. Our souls, I think they've known each other, and there's this connection that we felt very quickly, and this familiarity that I feel with you. So my spirit and my soul is doing really. It's very open to this this relationship that we formed and this conversation that we're having. Yeah. Okay,
That's awesome. No, I wanted to say like spirit can be like that. It's because it's different for a lot of people, but I sometimes would describe like the spirit as or the soul as like that that inner conversation that you have. For those who aren't, maybe they're not spiritual and they're like, what does that mean? I just wanted that to be something that people have. It's like, I think everybody has that inner conversation that they have with. Some people do, maybe some people don't. I don't know. But I just wanted to say that that's for those who are listening that might not understand, like, because they might like, well, I just wanted to like just say like, okay, so whatever that conversation is that you have.
Tell me yours. Let's share yours. Or tell us yours.
Oh well.
Let's check in with you. How you doing? Mind, body, soul, spirit.
Yeah. Let's see. Mind, I would say. There's a lot of things that I got going on that I feel like I got to check off. I feel kind of a little bit scattered, mentally. Like I feel like there's a lot of things, stresses about kids and, stresses about work and stresses about my health. I think the one thing that's on my mind daily is where my health is. That's something that I would say is a concern because, since I've taken on the plant-based diet, it hasn't been perfect. And so I still have old like thoughts of like, even before I took on the plant-based lifestyle change, it's, I've always had this relationship with like, am I eating, am I getting my proteins and all the, and all the fats and all the carbs, all that stuff. And since I've gone, plant-based, it's even, I feel like there's even more of a challenge because it's like, not only is it difficult just to maintain eating majority plants, like I'm worried like, man, am I doing it right? Or, how much carbs am I taking? So now that I don't eat a lot of protein lately, my carb intake has gone up, the breads and maybe even the sugars, you know what I mean? So that's on my mind. That's something that's on my mind a lot lately. And then my body, so I have gout. And lately, I think this morning, I actually the last couple of days, I've had this. I don't know if it's actually gout, but when I get the pains in a particular area, it's usually around my ankles. I attribute it to gout, but I don't know if it's another condition that I have that I'm just not aware of. But for those who don't know, oh my gosh, I don't even know if you have it, Dr. Rock, but it is like it's extremely painful. And I've had it for several years now. So, I have the medication for it, but it sucks because it's like, if I don't have that medication, it's debilitating. Like I can't walk. Like I feel like I rolled my ankle. Like it's like, and sometimes it's acute pain depending on, what I'm doing. And sometimes the best solution is just not to move, so whenever there's bending in my ankle and it's right below like my Achilles tendon, like right underneath that portion of like your heel. And it's like going back to my mind, like I'm thinking about the pain. So it's like, man, like, I get tired of that. I just get tired of like feeling like that, so that's how the body's feeling. And then as far as like, feeling like, cause then that affects like the ability to go out for a walk, you know what I mean? Or getting some type of, physical activity.
Sure.
So that's how the body's feeling. And then the spirit, I would say, or the soul, or the inner conversation. I tend to beat myself up because it's just like, man, dude, like, when am I gonna get going? All right, it's Monday. Let's start on Monday. It's like that. Okay, I'm gonna start today. And Mondays just keep coming and nothing has gotten going. So that's where I'm at today. And I actually, I wanted to share. Like, I really look forward to our conversations because I get a lot out, you know what I mean? Like I get to like really, it's like voicing it out loud and being able to hear what's going on. I think you don't get that a lot, like I don't feel like there's not a lot of places for men to actually talk about some of the stuff that's going on. There's not, we're expected to, uphold our households and provide and, take care of this, take care of that. And then to not have a space where we can go and be like, man, this is what's going on, dude. It's kind of like hanging out after like some type of exercise. And, there's that time where you're just like, man, that feels great. Like either a run or a workout session and, you're hanging out, whether it's in a sauna or, just taking a break and you're just kind of just talking, you know what I mean? And you kind of check in with like, man, that was either a good workout or whatever. There's not a lot of spaces like that,
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I've been looking forward to our conversations.
Wow. Cool. Thank you. I feel the same way. I feel the same way that our conversations create this space for me to be honest with you and to share things that I'm struggling with and I'm trying to figure out, and it's like this shared learning that we're experiencing this together. And now there's more other people that can share in this learning, and we can share in their learning. It's more learning the better, right?
Right.
So, okay. So Poe, people don't know you. People don't know you. What are the most important things you would want people to know about you?
Oh, that's a very loaded question because I'm 41 now, so it's like, I always say like who you are when you're 15 isn't who you are when you're 25, isn't who you are when you're 35. So you just kind of develop. Let's just start with I was born here in Santa Rosa, California. My parents, my mom's Pacific Islander, she's Samoan, and my dad, who was kind of absent, is Tahitian. I was raised in American Samoa until I was about 10, then moved to California about, I don't know, I think 1989 is when we moved here. So I've been here ever since. And throughout my life, I've always sort of been challenged and struggled with healthy lifestyle choices. And that can be, a lot of different factors from what I was taught when I was young, what the environment was with health. I'm not going to just say food, but just with health in general. In my family dynamics, it wasn't something that was very much talked about or even, been aware of. So it wasn't until later in my life, I think I say within the last 10 to 12 years, that's when I really started. And I used to be an athlete. But what's interesting is that the concept of taking care of yourself as an athlete when I was younger, it's completely different than it is today. And that's just through science and technology, and people are smarter now. People are smarter now. So you're aware. My awareness of my health overall has expanded as I gotten older.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like in American Samoa versus here in the States? You mentioned you were there and then you moved here and then you were going back and forth.
Yeah, the American Samoa was I would say I felt as a kid that I would say it was a very freeing, liberating experience as a kid, because I remember literally going out to play. There was no worries about anything and not coming home until literally like the street light came on, So there was always that. It was like a safe place to be when I was a kid. And you were running around exploring the island, swimming in the ocean, and I remember like not kind of carefree lifestyle, It wasn't until I got here. I remember getting here, it was nighttime, and I'd never seen so many lights in my life. Because in the islands, it's just not, there's just not a lot of lights. I don't know. That's just the one distinct memory that I remember in the car, like coming home from San Francisco, SFO, like looking outside, and I was just like completely taken back by all the lights. And the only experience to my memory that I could recall the United States or America was on TV. Like that was my only understanding of what America was like. So to be able to see it, it was good. Now, the diet, if I were to reflect on my health, there really was no awareness about health foods or eating healthy at that time that I can remember. But it was a culture shock. living in the islands and then moving to the mainland was completely different. Then it went from the liberating feel of like carefree to like don't go outside because you could get kidnapped or so it was like that was like my parents' like understanding of so I went from this abundant mindset to this like real scarcity mindset, like don't fear this, fear that. So it was always a very fear-based mentality that I can remember from my parents and my grandparents about how it was here in the States. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting a sense of two very different environments. I want to circle back to what you said about food and health, and you said you didn't really get much information. People weren't really aware about those
Yeah.
things. What did your food environment look like in American Samoa? Was it different in when you moved to the Bay Area, and how do you think that shaped your relationship with food?
I can remember eating like burgers and French fries as a kid in the islands. Now, that was different from we were still having cultural foods: taro, fish, beef, pork, plantains, breadfruit. But at the time, I remember wanting more of the American influenced food, like because at that time, I think obviously burgers and fries was like this was like early '80s, right? So there was a big push during that time for McDonald's, all the big fast food joints, right? And also the other thing I can remember is soda.
I ate it all. I loved
Yeah,
it.
like yeah, exactly.
I know,
Like,
I
like
know
why would
exactly
I
what you
want taro? I want French fries and burgers, and you know what I mean. So that at that time, as a kid, I remember I'd always ask,
mean. Yeah.
my grandmother, can we have that? And so even though I loved my traditional style foods, of which was also not the best, but I feel like it was better because it was just more. It was made a little bit different, wasn't as quick and processed. Right?
I've reflected on this. I'm curious to hear what you think. My parents came from India, and so I was child of immigrants, and almost like getting that food, both for the family and for their kids, was almost like a sign of making it. Like you're sort of
The
living
status
the
thing.
American
Yeah.
dream by eating this American processed food. And it makes the children happy. Turns out it makes the
100%.
children happy and the grown-ups happy in the moment. So that's what started the addiction, though, was sort of like, oh, this is like why we came here. Not why we came here. We came here for like opportunities, but one of
Right.
the opportunities is, oh, we have this
Exactly.
like very convenient packaged food, which has all sorts of problems, but all sorts of benefits if you're busy and you want something that's highly palatable and whatnot. Anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up because I was just thinking of the same thing. Like it was a status symbol. Like even though we didn't live in America, we would still get the ads. So when you're in the islands and you see an ad for, let's just say, for example, McDonald's or Burger King, we don't have that. We didn't have that there at the time. But there was a corner store, a mom and pop store that was selling a hamburger and fries, right? So you would go and buy that versus, okay, it's not what they're selling in the States, but it was that influence, right? It was that influence that the ad companies had over just making that. And like I said, it wasn't the actual thing, but like you said, it was like a status thing. Oh yeah, well in America that's what they eat, so let's start eating that. And I think that's why there's such a big obesity crisis in the South Pacific, man. It's just because of the influence of all the ads. It's just the power of how the ads connect to people. And like you said, it's like a status. Like this is what happens when you make it in America. You got to eat the American diet.
Talk to me about that, about health and kind of chronic disease, your experience with it when you were growing up. Were there other family members that had health issues or
Yeah, like my grandmother, she was heavily overweight. I remember that growing up. I had a few uncles that were just bigger, and Polynesians are just bigger people, and I don't know if it's that whole nature versus nurture argument where it's like not only is it something that's genetically ingrained, but it's also obviously the environment and the food that we were surrounded by. But being a bigger person, you felt comforted that other people were big. So the health idea, like the whole concept of health wasn't really a conversation in my family growing up. So yeah, like, and then when you start noticing, so there's just this comfort feeling like, okay, we're all big people, so it's okay, to be a bigger person. And then some cultures, and why do you even say that in some cultures also, like, oh, it's considered like you're a healthy person. And sometimes even a wealthy person, a bigger person represents that, that like a status thing. So, but yeah, the concepts. So that also, when I got to the States or when I got into the mainland, the people that I would see were usually like wrestlers or sports people, and they were also big people. So it was like this narrative that being a bigger person is part of who I am. It's part of my identity as a people in the States, as a Polynesian person, a Samoan person. Oh, you're big boned, but you don't. It's like that's a common one. Oh, you're big boned. It's like, so it just justifies the unhealthiness. Now you could be strong and muscle, and still be healthy, but that wasn't something that wasn't the narrative. It was just mostly like, okay, so since you're a big person, that's because you're, of this descent, because you're Polynesian descent. But it wasn't until later that, like I said, like people, like, because of science and technology and studies are now starting to see, like, it's not always like that. Like you could have a genetic code. What is it? Epigenetics. That's something that has some influence in your DNA. And so
they're like gene switches, Yeah. Like you have some genetic predisposition, let's say,
right,
for having a certain trait or having a certain condition, and it's not just one gene; it's usually multiple genes. And but the environment that they're in, it determines whether or not those genes transcribe, whether they're turned on or
activated,
off.
right?
Activated, exactly. And that environment is largely created by your lifestyle. The food you eat and, how you manage stress and whether or not you're getting restful sleep. These things actually have a huge impact on whether or not these gene switches get turned on and off. So that's exactly what you're saying, epigenetics. But I hear you. You had this identity of what it meant, what it means to be, or what it meant to be American Samoan, Polynesian, Islander in the United States. All these examples you saw around you were people who were bigger guys. And then that feeds into your self-identity. So growing up here, then you moved here, I think, when you were like right before you were a teenager.
Correct. Yeah.
And so growing up here, as a teenager, what was that like?
It was, I can remember being a challenge. I remember I used to, so number one, I didn't know the language. So I was fully, speaking Samoan. The only exposure that I had to English was like on TV. So it was like, I knew certain words, but it was like broken English. So it was difficult. I just remember being, challenged by being picked on because I didn't know how to like speak English, and I was in the English second language, classes, and most of all the immigrants and those who moved from the States from other countries, we all kind of formulated a bond in those classes. I still remember some of my friends that I made in those classes, and I was like elementary school, and there was a lot of bullying, and I didn't subscribe to that, so I was always kind of like the guy that would like challenge the people that would be picking on the people that were in these courses. So because I kind of always
standing up for the
and I didn't like that at all, and I just remember getting in a lot of fights growing up when I was younger because I didn't number one, I felt very empathetic to us excuse me, in the group of people that are just trying to learn how to like speak English, learn how to understand the teachers, learn the culture, and that's where like the huge, the American status of like what type of shoes and clothes and food, that whole thing was like, it was new to me because I was, excuse me, I was still wearing hand-me-downs from my cousins that were, so it was, I would say when I first got here, it was a challenge socially for me because I was just trying to like, I went from an all Samoan school where everybody understood the culture and there was like, that normal, stuff that you're dealing with when you're in the islands. And then and it's like this carefree attitude. Now you come to the States and it's like, not everybody had cars in the islands. Now everybody has a car, and like you're just having to learn like this culture. And so I just felt like it was a big like a culture clash. And socially it was awkward because, like I said, I didn't understand English, and my friend groups were all people that were from other countries, and they're just learning how to speak English. So, and then being bullied was like one of those things that really got under my skin, because I just felt like, man, none of us knew what was going on. And
Yeah.
I kind of took that sort of protector mentality of like, not wanting people to pick on us. So I would always like confront the people that were trying to pick on us. So anyways, yeah.
So then, okay. So then, at some point, you start to embrace this bigger guy,
Right.
and what?
So, yeah, so I think from that moment of being like this protector narrative that I started telling myself, like I got rewarded for being a bigger person, helping others and protecting other people, that I think in the subconscious level, being a bigger person, I was rewarded by it, And so what I didn't realize,
Like like you were able to stop the bullying. They were
Correct.
like, we're not gonna mess.
right.
This guy. Like, don't bully anyone in the ESL class.
Exactly.
Oh.
Right? So you can
Tupotu
imagine,
is
like,
going to
right. So now you have this rush of
Sure.
like, like this total dopamine hit of like, man, and like all the girls thought that was really cool. You know what I mean? So like there's that part of it too. So I was like, wow, I don't think as my young, 10-year-old mind understood it, but it felt good. Like
At a
knowing
very
that,
young age, you learned that being a bigger guy and using that presence for good,
yes,
it was valued, and it also felt good.
felt 100% good.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that big. Now it's like the trauma of whatever happened during that time, right? Fed in with not understanding, and then not understanding what was happening in the moment, and then also the lifestyle of like, my environment, the people that are raising me also didn't have a conversation about health. So I had this understanding, like, well, if I was a bigger person and I don't get picked on anymore, and if I do, then if I challenge it, most likely nobody's gonna mess with me or even the people that I know. So I just continued down that path, and then sports was introduced, and I remember always being a bigger person. So at that time, I would say, I think close. I mean, I played in the playground throughout elementary into junior high, but when I got to junior high, one of the biggest things that I remember about growing up is like so now my friend group has changed. Now I'm hanging out at school. I play with all my friends that were involved with sports. But this was the first time my weight became, this isn't even the bad reinforcement or the negative reinforcement came with being a bigger person. To play on a Pop Warmer team at that time, you had I don't remember the weight, but you had to be under a certain weight at a certain age to be able to participate in organized sports. I was too big. And so that was the first time, like even all my friends that we would play on the playground with at school were like, man, why don't you play? And I'm like, man, I'm too big. So that was the first time I got some negative backlash for being a bigger person, right? Or a bigger kid, I should say. And then, so it was frustrating because I didn't understand, like, and at that time I didn't really have like a structure on like how to lose weight. Like I said, my dad was sort of like an absentee dad. And my mom was always working, and my grandmother, who also played a big role in raising me, she didn't really have any concepts of, of health. And at the time, my grandfather was experiencing Alzheimer's. So she was heavily dealing with him going in and out of dementia. And so nobody was really around, no role model or there was no figure in my life saying, okay, you're overweight, let's try to get you into a certain weight so that you can play sports. So in other words, so in my junior high days, which would be about 6th to 8th grade, I was just participating in, the activity was like PE and also whatever sports were playing in the school ground. Now, but I would go watch my friends play actually organized football. And so that's, like I said, that's when I started realizing, that's when I think I started being aware of it, but didn't know what to do about it. I knew you can just run, but I mean, at that time, like running was just not my favorite thing.
So you're 13, 14 years old. You want to play organized sports. They tell you you're above the weight cutoff, and so you can't play. And then what I'm hearing is there was nobody. Everybody in your family was sort of stretched very thin,
Yeah.
in a lot of different ways, and there was nobody who was kind of looking out for the health of the family,
Yeah.
because nobody was probably looking out for their own health.
No.
Right.
None.
Everyone was
Yeah.
just trying. Everyone was like on some sort of doing, survival, doing
Right.
the best I can
Right.
in the situation I have, and like prioritizing health wasn't on that list because
Wasn't
there
on a
were many
priority
other
list.
things to
Yeah.
worry about. I hear that. Right. So then at some age you're like, but I'm too big and maybe I want to play sports. Like, how might I lose weight? And then what happened next?
Got into high school. At that point, there was no weight limit for playing sports. Got involved with school organized sports. So I at a young age, I was always playing
Uh-huh.
older people. Played football, and even when I was in sports, that's when the concept of like getting strong and working out was introduced to my life. I had a couple. I think by my sophomore year, I had one of my uncles. He used to play basketball, and he was the first person to actually teach me what it was like to be like in a routine of like getting up in the morning, getting some protein and carbs, and then working out, and then working out again. Like he played basketball at the Sonoma State. So I believe he got a scholarship from Ohio and played basketball for Sonoma State, which is a local university here in Rohnert Park. And that was the first person that introduced the concepts, like I said, of like taking care of your body, and your body will take care of you. I mean, he was a very good shape, like muscular. I mean, the dude, and he was like 6'5". So he kind of slid in as that role of like, okay, now the idea of taking care of yourself was introduced, and so that was like my first introduction to, oh, okay, so this is what
That was your uncle
that was an uncle of mine.
on
Yeah.
your mom's side?
It was my mom's sister's husband,
Ah, okay.
and that was like 16 years old.
Okay. Got it.
And so, yeah, that was the beginning of like, okay, so this is how you're supposed now. And he was like strict. I mean, he was like bodybuilder mode, like a can of tuna and potato, like no seasoning, no, like it was like, okay, you eat rice before you work out, cocoa rice, which is like an old Samoan like dessert dish, and like,
Oh, he was Samoan.
he was actually mulatto. So my mom's sister Samoan. My uncle, who she married, was actually half black, half native, white, whatever the mulatto. I don't know if that's a political term. I don't know if that's a PC term or not, but that's what I was told what he was.
Uh-huh.
Was mulatto. And that's who was the first person that introduced to me to, like I said, that lifestyle of like taking care of yourself. Now, he wasn't a plant-based person. Like he believed in eating, proteins, like the general, like I would say the general thought process of carbs, protein.
Oh, I believe in eating protein as well.
Yeah, well,
Just in plant form.
Yeah, different version of protein.
No,
Right.
okay. So football comes along, and then you're working out, you're getting bigger, stronger, but yeah. What was the food situation like?
I would say that at that time, that's I wasn't necessarily like, I was still a teenager, so like going and eating fast food was still a common thing. Like I remember after games, oh man, like we would me and a bunch of my friends at that time would go and like, I mean, we would go and order all kinds of like In-N-Out, and we're not talking about like we're talking like a 4x4. You know what I mean? Like
There you go.
animal fries, like everything, milkshakes. Yeah, and then like two of those, like, and it was just like, and that was the other thing. It was like my social group at that time were all like, so now we're all Polynesian, and we're all like the big, everybody rewarded us for playing good, we're tough and all this stuff. Like, so now the narrative of even from when I was young in elementary school to now I'm a football player, getting the same dopamine hits of being acknowledged and being rewarded for being this bigger stature person. So it just continued defeating, like that, so like I said, my social group, my friends at the time, were all Polynesian. So we were all subject to the identity of being the bigger guys. Like I had one buddy, he would literally eat if we went to a restaurant, we ate, he would eat whatever we weren't eating. So even after I was just stuffed to eating, he would continue eating, and it was just like, we used to call him like the garbage disposal. Like he would just eat whatever we didn't eat. And we're talking about large feasts, right? Like it was no health feast, man. It was no health feast, man. It was just like just a real feast. So that's why I was just like, so now my group identity is now like these bigger guys. So it's harder to like, and I can honestly say like none of us were, there was no thoughts of like diabetes or, like we just weren't thinking about that, and what my life looked like in 10, 20 years, like just weren't just not in the realm of our reality.
And then can I step out of this for a second and ask you to talk about your health a little bit, your health and how you feel on a regular basis.
I think I would describe my health like a relationship.
Okay.
Like when I'm dating my health, I'm doing really good. You know what I mean? Like I'm taking care of myself, and it's like first love, man. Like all I'm doing is like, okay, when am I working out? I got it all scheduled out. All right, I got my meals. Am I eating right? And then when I'm breaking up with health, it's like a bad breakup, man. Like it's a deeply bad breakup.
You're ghosting health.
Yeah.
Like I've been trying to get in touch with him for 3 weeks, and he's
man. Yeah, exactly. Like I'm trying to missing my phone calls, you know what I mean? Like, that's the way I would describe my health in my lifetime. It's just like when it's good, it's really good, and then something may happen, like some event, whether it's a personal event or an event that's outside of me, not even affecting me. It's something else that's happening. It happened to somebody else that affects it.
Sure.
Oh, injuries. That's another one. Like obviously that would fall under the personal, but like let's say I had an injury, that throws me off. Getting sick. If I get sick, it just throws me off. Like, so it's just, it's probably, and I've said this before, it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do is just take care of myself, man. And I don't know if that's common or if that's just, the cards for me, like that's the cards I was dealt, is that is the hardest thing. And for other people, it might be other things, but I know for me, to get healthy, it's been one of the most challenging things, if not the most challenging thing in my life.
Poe, you take medications?
I do have medication. I do have high blood pressure medication. Okay. Metformin is one that I'm taking. And then gout medicine when per needed. Like whenever I get these attacks, I feel like I got to take those. So yes, I do take medication.
Okay. All right. The metformin, is that for... Because they told you were pre-diabetic?
Yes.
Pre-diabetic.
Yes.
Okay. And then your weight is something that you said you've struggled with.
Oh yeah. I've been as high as like 420 pounds, and then I've been as low as like in my adult life 200 and maybe 70 pounds, and even at 270, it's not the healthiest at my height. So I've always gone up and gone down, sort of like the yo-yo dieting, is exactly what, where I'm at. And like I said, I'm well into my 40s, and it's still something that I
want to explore that a little bit with you, because I think for lots of people, pretty much everyone who has dieted has experienced this, the ups and downs and ups and downs. And so I think there's a lot to explore there, and a lot that could probably be illuminated by your experience. I would ask, what age or at what point in your life did you say, I need to diet, or I need to do something differently such that I intentionally lose weight?
So I was aware of being a bigger person, like I said, like right into junior high, but I don't think I took on eating healthy until I was well into my 30s. which is not only about like maybe late 20s, early 30s is when I think it was like, okay, it's time for me to start doing some type of.
What do you think was what was the impetus for you? Because you mentioned that you had formed this identity about being kind of from being a bigger guy, and that there was almost this extrinsic reward that you were getting for being a bigger guy. So at what point did you say, you know what, maybe I need to think about
Start.
losing weight?
I think the passing of one of my, well, number one, I think the passing of one of my uncles. He died in his sleep, and he also was someone that was more like a fatherly figure growing up. He died in his sleep, and I think that's when it was the first time I started thinking like, man. And prior to that, my grandmother passed away, and my grandmother was like, I believe she's in her 60s, so I don't think she was that old. And my uncle, he was like in his 40s, like 45 years old, something like that. I believe. And so that's when I was like, okay, I need to start actually thinking about losing weight, and start doing the diet. Like I was familiar, like my aunts were always like, one of my aunts who stayed with us was on this like cabbage soup diet. And I was like thinking, oh man, there's no way, I'm going to Taco Bell or, you know what I mean? Like I'm working at Domino's Pizza and I'm like, a cabbage soup diet? What the heck is that? And I saw her do it and I'm like, that is crazy. And then I seen the lemon, the cayenne pepper lemon cleanse. And I'm like, what the, you're not even eating
Just
anything.
drinking water with cayenne.
Yeah, like, and I'm like coming out of I'm coming out of high school and I'm thinking, heck no, meanwhile, like I'm playing for the JC football. And then after I figured I stopped playing football, I wanted to get into the work world. And it's crazy that the job that I was getting was like bouncing, doing security at night at clubs and bars. So it just further reinforced my identity as being a big person, And so it was rewarding. I mean, I like I said, like I would get all these benefits, right? And it wasn't until later in life that I started thinking like, man, when I look back, I'm thinking, man, every job that I ever had something to do with like being a bigger person. Like even, so I would work at night in the, in security. And then during the day I would work as like a mentor for kids coming out of juvenile hall. And that would also be rewarding because a lot of the kids, like they respected me. I was a big statured person. So, I didn't have a lot of problems. So like my identity was wrapped up in this size, I could definitely have been a bigger person, but been healthy, but that wasn't in my mindset. Being healthy wasn't in my reality, in the realm of my reality. So, it wasn't until my uncle passed away and also like my grandmother passing away of these health conditions that I really started thinking like, man, I need to start doing something about it, but just didn't know how to do it, or I would know how to do it and not execute a way to do it. That's what I find later now. But in the beginning stages of being aware of starting to diet and doing all that, I had no clue how to start.
At some point when you were a teenager, you had a cousin who lost a lot of weight. Is that right? A family member.
I would say not in my teenagers. I would say more later, like 20s. Yeah.
How old were you when your cousin was on The Biggest Loser?
I think I was 20.
Oh, okay.
I think it was 20. I was like maybe 28.
I hear you.
That's when I started really like, because having seen him do that was like, whoa. He did it in like 6 months, like lost over 100-something pounds. And so now that conversation has started with me where I'm like, okay, how do I do it? And then they get on Biggest Loser and I'm like, oh, so that's how you're supposed to do it. And that's the only way to do it, because he did it fast and he looks great. He's doing all these things like, running and doing all that. And I'm like, man, I want to do that. And so that led me down this like, okay, well, let me see how they did it. They went to a casting call and they got picked. Like they just loved them. I mean, and they had great personality. We all had great personalities. I can't say it was just one or two of us, but we all were like, oh man, so that's how you do it. Okay, then me and a buddy of mine did the same thing, but I didn't realize how unhealthy that way of doing it was. So
what do you mean you did the same thing? You tried out for The Biggest Loser, or you tried out for?
I tried out for a different one. I think VH. So at that time, it was really popular. Like weight loss shows were just off the charts apparently with ratings, and so other networks were trying this weight loss these weight loss shows, and one of the shows that were, or one of the networks that were doing the same thing was VH1, and VH1 they
When was
weren't
this?
really.
It was in 2011?
Yes, 2010, 2011, I believe. Yeah. So I see the success that my cousin had, and like I said, he's about 5 years younger than me. So so I was about, he was like maybe in his early 20s. I was like getting late into my 20s, and I seen his success. So I figured in my mind, oh well, that's the only way to do it, right? To where you can do it fast. And so
Be on a reality show.
correct.
That's the only way you can. I'm laughing, but I hear you. You didn't have any role model, anyone sort of giving you this guidance, and then here in your life you see this blaring example of what's possible, and to you you're like, that's the way to do it. I
Right.
need to follow that path.
Yes. And so I did. And me and a buddy, we got casted for a show where you were putting up the difference between Biggest Loser and this show. It was called Money Hungry. And VH1 is a gimmick network. They're not really about the heart and soul, which was what Biggest Loser was at the time, right? VH1 was more of a gimmick. And I think my buddy and I, my close friend Dave Shinoni and I, we didn't care about the money. We didn't care about winning. We wanted to lose the weight. Because at that time, we were both, like, he was pushing, I believe he was like almost 500 pounds. And I was, like I said, 400, almost 420, in between that, if I can remember correctly at that time.
When you went on the show, so you got cast for this show, and I should add, Poe, at this point, how many children?
I had three daughters at that time.
Three daughters.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you brought up, because my family was a big source of motivation at that time, to try these different methods of trying to lose weight, because I couldn't do it on my own. I felt like it was just a challenge, and on top of that, my wife is like, she's not someone who struggles with weight. Even till this day, my wife can lose weight just like that. Like she's just, and I don't know if that's just the way she was raised and what health was to her family, but it's just polar opposites when it comes to health. But the thing about her is that she can eat anything and lose weight. Like she literally eats whatever she wants, fast food, and
Right.
she'll put on weight. And like even with having kids, she'll have kids, and you have kids, she gets the kid weight, but she loses it right away.
Yeah. Poe,
And
well, I
so-
think one thing to point out is the difference between just weight and health, right? The two are linked. Certainly like having excess weight contributes to your risk for metabolic disease and things like that. But on the other hand, like you can be of a normal, quote unquote, normal weight and not necessarily be healthy. And you can
Yes.
be of a larger weight or having, by definition, excess weight, but also still be quite healthy. So there's that. And for you, it sounds like, at least early in this journey, you got in your head that weight loss was sort of the health goal.
Correct.
Is that right?
That's right. That I wasn't. I think even at that time, I still didn't understand what you just said. Like I felt like, oh, bigger size equals unhealthy, smaller size equals healthy. So I still, in my understanding of health, was still very ignorant to that idea. To me, I identified a thin weight, a smaller body, super healthy. So I was still evolving on my knowledge of what it is to be healthy. So made the show, raised the money. So the concept of this show was you had to put up your own money as a wager to lose weight. And they would throw you into a house that had all junk food and health food.
Oh, I don't know if I told you this. You told me about this show like a few weeks ago, and I watched the entire thing. It's on Amazon. It's 10 episodes, I believe, and yeah, it's well worth. Well, I don't know if I. For me, it was well worth the watch.
Pretty interesting
But you
stuff.
can go, for anyone listening or watching, you can go on Amazon Prime and search for Money Hungry. It was only one season.
Yeah,
Well, you were in the inaugural season. Let's hope that that this production has more than one season.
100%.
Um,
100%.
what was that? So you raised $10,000. You and your buddy go on, say, "Oh, we're going to lose." In what period of time? I think you told me 45 days
So in
or something.
45 days, I think I
Uh-huh.
lost over 80 pounds in 45 days.
That's right. And if
And
you watch the show, which I encourage all of you to do, you're exercising, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Like the show took place in some like some large
mansion, yeah.
mansion, yeah, but it was right next to like a gym they built.
Yeah, it was like a
And you would
pop-up gym.
shuttle between the house and the gym and just exercise.
That was it. That's all we did. That's all me and Dave did, man, was we got up in the morning, we ate little to nothing. Like
Mm.
little to nothing in the morning, and then spend the rest of the day, whether we were on the treadmill, walking. That, honestly, that's where I learned about walking. Like we walked, I don't know how many miles we walked, but we walked at least 2 hours a day. No, at least 6 hours a day.
So
But
when you
that's all
weren't
we did.
working out, you were just walking.
We had workouts because they had to film us working out certain times.
Hmm.
And they also had challenges, right? Where we had to swim or we had to like go up a hill. But we didn't want to get hurt. That's the other thing. Like part of it was like if we got injured, we wouldn't be able to be. So we try to do the most least impact workouts in between show times because they would have what they call dark days where there's no film. You have a free day to do whatever you want. And on those days, we would either try to squeeze in 6 hours of working out and then and in between shoots because we'd have to like shoot, and so we were still when they weren't filming us, we were still trying to lose the weight, and so all we did was walk. I mean, we got as low as like 800 calories a day.
Wow.
Yeah, and but we were still putting out a lot of energy. Like we were burning at least, man, I knew we were trying to burn at least 3,600 calories a day.
Hmm.
That was at least. That was at least because we were just looking at the monitor on the treadmill, and
Hmm.
I can't remember if they gave us calorie counters at
So
that
you
time.
didn't end up winning though. You did in some ways because in
Oh
your
yeah,
head you're like, wow, I lost all this weight, and you got second place, which means I saw you got your money back,
correct.
which is better than losing your money.
Then exactly.
And then you go home from this experience, and now have in your head this protocol for losing weight. Like, how did that transition go?
It was very hard because like I feel it was such a challenge because the unrealistic expectations that I set. The unrealistic expectations that we set on ourselves when we even took on this TV thing, and then, like I said, getting up before the sun was out to go and get on the treadmill, and then so what happened when I got home, I was trying to keep up the same regimen. I mean, the last day of filming, like we were so deprived. I believe that my body was like starting to shut down because we were still walking up until the last day because we were just trying to lose. At that point, we were trying to lose as much weight as we can. So I remember feeling like not good. I just remember at the hotel because at that point we were done with filming at the place, and then we did the last showing. We came in second. Now we're at home, and I'm trying to maintain that same lifestyle of like working out 6 times a day. Or I'm sorry, I keep saying 6 hours a day, up to 3 times a day, going to the gym. And for a while, my wife was very supportive because she was like, "Well, wow, you've almost lost 100 pounds. Let's just keep going." So in my mind, I'm like, I want to get to this certain. At that time, the number was a big deal for me. The scale number. It was really unhealthy. Like looking back, I mean, I was on that scale every day. And it was unrealistic. We have 3 kids, and luckily they were still young. I don't think they had started going to school just yet. They were still like little babies. So I was still able to figure out who can watch my kids while I go to the gym. And I got to a point where my wife was like, "Yo, you're spending so much time at the gym. You're never home, And then, like sometimes 2 hours at the gym, and then coming home, taking care of the kids. And then, so it wasn't sustainable, man. Like it just wasn't something that was,
Can it's just emblematic of what so many people do. I mean, this is like an extreme case, right? But people frame diets in this way, right? And exercise too as a form of punishment. Yeah, I'm going to say that because that's what it sounds like, you know? It sounds like I have to beat myself down and burn as many calories as possible. And I have to eat as little as possible because anything I eat is going to add to my body weight. And you know, most diets aren't necessarily that extreme. And I would say they're flavors of that. They're varying degrees of that. And the problem with that is what you experienced, right? Is that's not sustainable.
No.
Not at all, right? How long are you going to sustain a punishment?
Not long at all.
Not very long, right?
No.
Something's going to happen. And I heard you say this earlier. You said, you know, things happen in life. Something stressful happens. And so, you know, that's something for us to explore because it's a sort of like, how are you conceptualizing, even now, like, how are you conceptualizing these lifestyle changes? And on some level, are you still viewing it as a restriction?
Mm.
You're still viewing it as a restriction so that when the opportunity presents itself to do something else that you have maybe on a subconscious level told yourself is more valuable or is better or has more enjoyment, is more fulfilling, for whatever reason, you're like, okay, now I'm going to take the liberty to do that because in this moment, I need that.
I think I've evolved. I think it's at a different level of it. I think it wasn't until more recently that I started viewing it. And even as we talk about it, I'm thinking like, how do I still view it as like a punishment? I don't necessarily think I do view it as a punishment because I found great reward when I'm just going for a walk. I mean, I understand that it feels good. See, that's the other thing that has changed is my connection. My mind and body connection has changed. You know, like, although I still struggle, you know, I still struggle like anybody else. But I do find that instead of like before 10 plus years ago, I would go to these spin classes that were just brutal, man. Like, but I got in the best shape. Like I was running 10 miles. Like, I mean, I had never been in such that big. Even when I was playing high school football, I wasn't as conditioned as I was. But it was like a grind. Like that's one thing everybody talks about. Oh, it's got to be hard. It's got to be a grind. And it was. I mean, getting up at 5 a.m. to go to a spin class and then, you know, and then running again in the afternoon. And it's just like I was just putting my body through this beating, man. And so now I don't view it the same. I don't view like I don't need to go to a spin class to be or like some type of boot camp. You know, they have all these names that they do now. You know, but I don't think I view it the same as I did back then. But I do remember, and people still use it now. Oh, you got to put yourself through. I mean, we're not special forces. You know what I mean? Like you're not trying to like we're not training to go go for war. But that's the mentality that I had back then, and now as I get older.
At a certain point after that show, you weren't able to maintain this very rigorous exercise routine. You probably weren't able to maintain this very limited calorie, because at this point you weren't thinking about what you were putting in your mouth. You were just thinking about the quantity of what
quantity, not so much quality, just the quantity. You know, like I gotta have a piece of chicken and I gotta eat some greens and I gotta have my protein. Yeah, it's funny because I understand all this, but it's like even now it's like I still like. It's so much information that it's like, well, what's the right way to do it that fits my lifestyle now?
That's right.
You know.
Right. Flash forward. So at some point, when did you realize that maybe I need to start focusing on my health more than just my weight?
Overall health, I would say within the last couple of years. I would say maybe even like a year ago now, I would say.
And where did that come from?
The so being that I've had that experience 10 years ago, I would equate being successful in health with the idea of like being removed from your life into a place where it's controlled, because definitely the money hungry experience was also a controlled environment.
Sure.
So to me, I was like, man, that's one of the best places to have the most success is when you're in that controlled environment. Well, I am friends with some casters for certain reality based TV shows, and I saw a ad or submission for an experience for lifestyle wellness. That's the other thing, wellness. That's something that I don't think was really promoted 10, 15 years ago. It was more like weight loss. So now I think the industry has changed to now understand like the concept of wellness, of a whole wholesome wellness approach versus calories in, calories out approach, which was like 10 to 15 years ago. That was like pushed. Calories in versus calories out. I was like, well, let's see what happens. At this point in my career, also, I sustained a lot of little events, but one event that really, so I kept up my working out. My weight would fluctuate, but from that experience over 10 years ago in that show, I was physically active, where I was like, okay, that became part of my life. Matter of fact, I had to lose some weight to go to the academy and pass the academy. So now I'm in my career, barely a year in, and I snapped my Achilles tendon. That was like 2015, 2016.
It's an academy for
Department of Corrections. So that's what I currently do. That's my career now. Is I currently work for the Department of Corrections.
I hear you. Okay.
So I tear my Achilles tendon.
Academy, you have to get in really good shape to get accepted, go through the academy. You're exercising regularly. Is this when you were doing all that stuff you said, like 10-mile runs and...
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're in the best shape of your life, and then you tear your Achilles tendon.
Yes.
And that sidetracks you.
Throws me off. Catastrophic. Like, I go from working out, running, doing all these stuff, to now I'm not able to do anything. My wife needs to help me to the shower. It's my right foot, so I can't drive, So for 10 months.
This was what, 4 years ago?
2000, yeah. About 5 years ago.
About 5 years.
2016.
Okay.
March 11, 2016. So now I'm in this space of like, what the hell? I put on, I don't know, man, 50 pounds just like that, dude. Because not only am I dealing with the depression of like, man, I just started this career. I can't work out. And now I'm just checked out, man. I'm mentally checked out. I don't know what to do.
And food becomes the drug then.
Yep.
Food becomes the drug because whereas exercise was elevating your mood before, exercise has been removed and you need something to numb the reality of
where I'm at.
Where you're at. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we all do. Yeah. This is what we all do. Then we find food, we use food. And then emerged from that, okay? Then you emerged from that.
Yes.
And at some point, what was your thinking on your health and after you recovered from that?
It took me the mental aspect of the injury. So the physical part healed. Not 100%, but it did heal. The mental part of that took the longest to heal because I was no longer what I was physically. Like I wasn't able to run 10 miles. I wasn't able to go work out all the time. The injury was just that's why I think the mental injury is far worse than the physical injury. Yeah. I had to accept the fact that I was no longer where I was before. And you want to talk about mental health issues, man. I was struggling at that time. So I put on 50, 60 pounds in a matter of months. And I was just like, man. So it wasn't until, a few years ago that I was like, well, let me just see what happens. And like I said, I saw this ad for this program that was going to be, I think, 3 weeks. That I wasn't aware of it, what it was supposed to be. So I connected it to something similar to what was going on, 10 years prior. And so I participated, got selected, and I show up, and they're like, and mind you, man, nobody in my family is.
Who went back up? What program was this?
It's a program called Pivio.
Okay.
Once known as
this was in summer of 2020. Is that right? 2021.
2021. Yeah.
I think that's what you told me.
Right.
Summer of 2021, you applied to go, where was that held?
That was in Florida, Destin, Florida.
Destin, Florida. 3-week immersion for a program called Pivio.
Right.
And tell me, you show up,
unaware of, it was similar in the sense that it was a controlled environment, but I show up and then the producers tell me, oh yeah, this is going to be so it's a wellness retreat where we're going to learn how to live there was pillars that the foundation of this program stands on. It's like your stress level, managing stress, your social connections, your meditation, your spiritual, whatever, your physical activity, and then your substance. That's the 5 pillars of this program. So, those were the things that they were introduced to us. Oh, and on top of that, you're going to try going plant-based. And I was like, whoa, that was like all the other stuff I could manage, but like the plant-based thing, I was like, whoa, hold up. Nobody told me about that,
How did you find out about this program?
Online, like I said. So part of, I guess, companies, when they are trying to roll out, whatever they're trying to, whatever the intention or the production, they reach out to certain casting calls, and these people are trying to find people that are be interested in doing these types of programs. And so that's how I found it. I found it via that program, my casting friend. On one of my social media sites, they were asking if I was interested in doing it. And so I said, yeah, sure, and I did it, got selected. That doesn't mean there's a guarantee you're going to get it. Like, they could go with somebody else. But for some reason, they liked, me and what I was trying to do. And I decided to do it.
So, Poe, I just share with the audience. I mean, first of all, the Pivio program is a rebranding of a program called CHIP, which was started quite some time ago by physician Hans Deal, and it's comprehensive health improvement program. I think something like that.
Yes.
And it's a community-based program, lifestyle change program. It's centered around the pillars of lifestyle medicine, and it's actually administered by like community members who are trained how to deliver the curriculum, the content, and it helps people make lifestyle changes in the directions like you were talking about, particularly focused around like a whole food plant-based diet. And you are now in, when that program was sold to actually an Australian like food company, like a healthy food company in Australia, and then they were rebranding it. It's called Pivio, and they filmed a whole series of videos, online like modules, right? And you are in those videos, so I believe your experience was part of that creation of the materials that they now use to administer the program. And I know that because you told me that, but also because on LinkedIn last week, or it was the week before, I was scrolling, and there you are in some photo for the Pivio program, like talking about your strategies when you travel of how you can eat more plant-based. And then like a day later, I'm scrolling and I see a sample module on behavior change, and I click on it, and there you are sitting in a room, and I'm like, that's Poe. I texted you. I see you. Wow, that's so that you went to that program for 3 weeks. Talk to me about that. What was that experience like, and how did that impact the way you view your health and your lifestyle?
I think the biggest thing that I took away from that, I thought about it, and I think it's like prioritizing yourself was the thing that I took out of that, because you get pulled. I've been in a controlled environment before where controlling food, all that stuff. That all matters. I mean, that's a relevant experience, but for some reason the experience with Pivio was just teaching me that, like, number one, you have to be able to put yourself first, versus, you know, we get busy with the hustle and bustle of life, kids and work and relationships and all that, and we tend to, like, and I think I still struggle with it now. We tend to forget that none of that stuff is able to operate or move without you, me being healthy. Like, none of that stuff, So that's the one thing that I think I took away from that experience in Pivio. I mean, I really got to meet some great experts in their fields, like great people. I'd never been to Florida, so it was the first time I ever been there. But like, to understand that being healthy doesn't mean weight. Like, for me, I always attributed being lower in weight is equal to healthy. But that's where I learned, like, no, not necessarily, because when they talked about your social, connections with people, when they talk about being, mindful practices, spiritual practices, whatever that is for somebody, or when they talk about how much caffeine are you drinking, because that's the first time I understood that, like, caffeine was something that, because I always would use it as a stimulant to get me, all right, once I start drinking coffee, boom, I feel that energy. Now I can go work out or do a workout, boot camps, whatever. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about how that can affect that too, and that's why you have headaches. Like, I never understood that, and now I understood that. And then that physical activity doesn't mean 3 spin classes a day. It means going for a walk, going to, taking your kids to the park and playing with them. Like, that's physical activity. It's not the grind. What else did I learn? I learned that, where is your food coming from? What is in the meat? How is the meat raised? What is the meat doing to you? Like, these are all concepts that I was just not aware of. Like, I knew people who were vegetarian. I knew people who were vegan, but I never thought that would be something that I would do. And even during the show, I would say, there's nobody in my family that eats like this. 0. And I got a huge family, And so... And, so, like, I come back and I'm like, I'm trying to just take on this plant-based eating. So the thing is, I felt the changes. I can't say that they were, because it was such a short time, but I do know that it was almost like a cleanse, because, like, I didn't have the life, the life stuff that had to do. It was like we were in this environment that was like, okay, we're gonna feed you.
You said something earlier about, like, in your head, like, that was, what did you say? You said, like, being able to remove yourself from your current life and have that protected time, that was a desirable outcome, because that would lead to better health. Right? I mean, that's what you sought out, basically. You saw this opportunity, you applied, and then, and you had an experience like that 10 years prior, although that was a very different experience, right?
Very different.
The message there was, how do I lose as much weight as possible?
Right. Yeah. And that was my knowledge of healthiness, was the weight. And so going to this, understanding the philosophy and the approach of like healthy being wholesome, and that there's different areas of your life to measure where you're at health wise. I think that was just like one of the best things that I took away from Pivio was understanding that health is not just weight loss. It's more than just weight loss.
It certainly sounds like an evolution on your thinking about your health, your overall health, and how you design your life and your behaviors to support that. It's also very interesting that it comes in the form of this production, and I see this through line where you sort of see your cousin go on The Biggest Loser, this big production, loses a bunch of weight. You go on this big production, don't develop sustainable habits, but you lose a bunch of weight. So certainly in your head, it plants a seed. Wow, such transformation is possible.
Exactly.
And then you go on this additional production, and then you come back, and what was that like? Trying to then, now you're no longer in this controlled environment, trying to develop those lifestyle habits in the context of, 4 children, full-time job as a correctional officer, married, wife, your partner is also working full-time. It's I'm answering the question, but it's not easy, right? But talk about that. Talk
No, I
about that,
mean,
because I think that's what everyone is dealing with.
I think that coming back from that experience was not only was it's such a great experience in learning that there's other ways of health, like health. My lens of how I viewed health 10 plus years ago is now evolved to like, wow, it's not just about that. It's actually about all these other areas, right? Mm-hmm. This feast of health. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just about what you're eating. It's about, what you're, it's about how you create lifestyle changes that aren't necessarily like these big, huge, long steps. It's literally like these small steps. Coming back, I kind of went into the same mode that I did when I went to the other production for Money Hungry. It was like, okay, I got to do all this stuff. Like, I had to make sure my pillars, and for the most part, there's this momentum that you come back with. I was in the middle of, our house was being built, so I was staying at my parents', my whole family was staying at my parents' house. Here I am, like, all right, we're gonna try to do plant-based and trying to take my kids through the steps. What I found with that is that there has to be a support group at home. That's what I'm developing now, because although I was doing really good, there was still like parts of me that were like, man, dude, this is a lot harder than I thought coming back. Because now I'm not going to the gym 6 hours a day. Now I'm like, okay, I just got to get one walk in a day. So while I was doing that, I was going from the walks. Then I was eating plant-based. And now when you have a household where I'm the only one eating plant-based, which is a complete extreme step for everybody, that I can't expect my whole family to just accept and adopt this lifestyle, So that's what I've learned from that experience to now, even after the third time I did another
one more production, actually 2 more productions, because this is a production as well. And well, yeah, we'll get to that. Why don't we get to that? What at some point you learn about a new opportunity to go on another reality show. Is this through your friends who are sort of involved in that?
Yes.
That sphere?
Yeah. Yes, they're like I said, they're casting producers, so their job is to make pretty much anybody that's interested in actually any type of thing. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, for me, it's always been health. There was another opportunity that came up for something that they were filming, and I don't think I knew where it was. It was just promoted as another wellness program, and I thought, well, I just got off of this one. I want to continue the momentum. I mean, so much in my mind was going through, because at this point we're getting ready to move. Well, actually, no, that was early in the summer of 2021. And then this one was I think 2022 of March. And so I was like, well, I talked to my wife and I'm like, man, I mean, I now, mind you, I didn't lose the 80 pounds that I had lost when I first started the first production. So I was like maybe 20 pounds down, and I was still in the 300s. It was never, and that's the other thing, is like maybe there's still some remnants of like, okay, if I continue to participate in these productions, I will eventually, be able to continue with the momentum and then eventually be in a healthier size, I should say. Mm. That was, I think, part of the mindset.
So you're looking for another production. I think that you have it in your head at some level that production will propel you, will help you with success, and on a obvious level, like, it gives you accountability, right?
That's part. Yeah.
If you're staying there and there's producers and they're like, we're doing this for a show, and you have coaches and
right. It would assist in my whole pursuit of the intention of getting to a healthier size, because at this point, and even now, my wife, so she's never pushed surgery, right? It wasn't until more recently that she's like, if none of this stuff works.
You're talking about weight
consider
loss
it.
surgery,
That's
bariatric
correct.
surgery.
Yes.
Okay.
And I've always been the person that's like, I can do it. I can do this on my own. I know I used to be an athlete. That's the other side of this. It's like, nah, to me, I equate that to quitting, which I've done the classes that they talk about it through Kaiser. I've viewed information about how that's not necessarily how it is, blah, blah, blah. I've had friends that have had it. I got, a friend that currently a coworker that's going to be doing it in December. So it's like, that's the other part of the production is like me going to these productions is just like this last straw of like, okay, this is the time that I get to try to really get in a healthier size so that I don't have to do the surgery. And so, yeah, I end up doing that.
Talk to me about that, Poe. Just being a healthier size and being a bigger guy now, like, and you said a lot of this is coming from like concern maybe you have or your wife has, or what is the concern, and what is your kind of, what are you afraid of about your health?
Where I'm at with that, it's so funny because she actually talked to me about it yesterday, and I don't know, man. Like right now, my thoughts on it is like it's still an option because I had an agreement with her, that if I didn't go through these productions or go through these experiences of losing the weight, that the option was to go under the knife and get that done. And the reason for that is my wife. We have 4 kids. I have a 4-year-old. And I can see her concern from her perspective. It's like, I'm one of the breadwinners in the family. We live in a 2-income house. So it's like, if something were to happen to me, that leaves her with all my kids. And, and the part of me totally understands. And then am I selfish for not, doing anything about it? Like, my wife has been with me the ups and the downs of my weight, man. The ups and the downs of my relationship with my health. Like, she's always been supportive. So, and then just talking to me about it right now, I just realized, like, man, is it a selfish thing that I'm doing? Like, because for her, I think it's like, a lot of people have passed away in my line of work. And the 8 or 9 years that I've been in the department, so many people have passed away from health issues. And so she's worried, part of her, it's not a daily worry, but it's something that it's behind her, it's in her mind that like, if I don't take care of myself, if I don't, do things that will help me get healthier, she's going to be left alone with my kids. And that's a concern of hers. So, for me, it's like, is it a selfish thing that I say, well, I'm still, in the process of doing it. It is a process, but I put my wife through this process. We've been married, 15 years. And through those 15 years, I've always had this thing with my weight. So, it's something that we talk about. Even now, like I said, she brought it up to me yesterday, and I said, it's because right now, I would say that currently with my health, it's at a low. It's not at a high right now. And that's even after I came back from this last production. And the learning from that production is that I have to have some type of support group, which is why you come into the picture.
So that, that as people already heard in the introduction, like was a 3-week immersion. Did you know? You knew it was a reality show when you applied?
Yeah, I wasn't aware of how. See, I didn't know what this was going to be. I had no inclination that it was going to be.
What was the prompt you were responding to? Like what did you know?
For me, I think I got to look at the actual call, the casting for it, but it was the same. It was a casting call for it. And I'm trying to see if I have a snapshot, because I remember taking a snapshot of it, but I don't remember what it says. I was going to read it to you because it caught my attention. I was like, okay, I'm still in the 300s. This is just my efforts on trying to do the same thing of trying to get wellness. I didn't know. I had a hunch, but I wasn't sure what it was about because it wasn't the same people that were putting it together. But I was plant-based. So even if they were to, let's say it was not a wellness plant-based, I would have said to them like I'm plant-based. So, but then it turned out it was very similar, like almost not the same philosophy because it's not built on the same program, but it's just another way of the same philosophy, I guess.
Right. Okay. So you did you know it was in Abu Dhabi?
I didn't know that.
You apply to be on the show, you get accepted, and then they tell you it's going to be
Yes.
3 weeks in Abu Dhabi.
Correct. You have your passport. They, pretty much gave us the whole printout of all the checklist things that we had to take care of. And I think this was, at this point I was just like, I can't, like, number one, you have to be selected. So it's not like I have a foot in, like they're just going to like, you know what I mean? Like something about you or me, they had to be like, man, we want him on this thing. So I asked God, like, man, that's 3 times that I've been selected for these things, man. I don't know what that,
There's
like.
a reason for this. There's
Right.
a reason for this.
Like, because they could have easily selected somebody else, and I start saying stuff like, well, maybe it's COVID and nobody wants to, you know what I mean? No one wants to travel with me. That's why I got it this time, But I even told my wife, like, what are the chances of someone getting selected for these
Well,
things?
let me ask this. Like, what are they asking for? What do you say to them? Are you sending in a video or?
They call me an interview like this. They'll do like an interview.
Yeah.
I don't think I had to send in an interview except for my weight, my height.
They asking you what? Like, why do you want to do this show?
Yeah,
What did
exactly. And I'd say that the exact same thing I'm saying to you is there's no difference except for, like wanting to get in a better health. You know what I mean? Like it's the biggest struggle of my life, man. Like, I don't know how else to describe that to somebody. For someone who's
the
never
biggest
had
struggle of your life, and you've made it a big priority in your life. Like, one thing I hear is that as you've gotten older, both because of maybe external forces, your wife and having kids and reflecting on that and thinking about that it's become this very important thing to the point where you're entertaining, thinking about, discussing with your wife the possibility of going through weight loss surgery, because you see, as you said, people you work with in the last less than 10 years, many people you've worked with, you've seen die from chronic diseases, and it's mostly probably heart attacks, a lot of heart disease.
Yes.
It's a very stressful job, very stressful environment, and the reality is a lot of people aren't, most people aren't eating the right food or food that best promotes our health. So you're witnessing that around you, and then recognizing, I don't want that. I don't want that for myself. Is that right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, and I have to be thinking about what my wife wants. For 15 years, she's been supporting me in what I want. And now we're at a point where it's like, and like I said, my wife has never once suggested surgery, Matter of fact, if you ask her, she said, I always liked them bigger. You know what I mean? But now that we're getting up in age and, we got, and people are passing away, it's like, what do I do? What's the right thing for me to do now? And so I can't say that I've completely X'd that out, because I don't think that's fair for my wife, because she's really concerned about my health, and now that pre-diabetes and maybe even borderline diabetic, and also high blood pressure is now in my reality, and I think about those things daily, man. It's like, man, and I think about my kids, and so when you have that time to check in, I really think about those things. And so part of the process of getting better and getting healthier is this health feast, is this conversations with you.
That's right. That's right. Well, you get back from what? So tell me what happened in Abu Dhabi. Tell us about.
Oh man, dude. Once again, one thing I realized, like, I get to create an environment like that for me. If I really, that's what I took away from this experience. So from Pivio, I learned that I need a support group. From Abu Dhabi and Revive is the name of that production, is that it is so important for one to create a support system at home. Because that's where I'm struggling now. That's the new challenge. It's like I have all these tools, I understand all these, but if there's no accountability and there's no structure and there's no support, all those tools mean nothing. If I am not able to create that environment for myself here at home. And that would be the evolution of of not only the productions, but in my health journey alone. Support is probably one of the most, I would say probably the number one thing that one has to do to sustain a healthier lifestyle and to get healthy is support. Because under support, a lot of the other things fall under, like, accountability is something that you can have with support. You have support.
What does support look like for you?
Um,
Support will look different, right? For different.
yeah, exactly. Accountability. I mean, I said that that's one thing for me that I think support is having in the support system, have some type of accountability, have some type of vulnerability, because if you're not able to get vulnerable, you're not able to get real. You got to be able to, I have to be able to find out what really matters to me. And part of understanding that, I believe, is you have to be vulnerable with others around you, with yourself. What else does support look like for me? Structure. With no structure, you can't stand on anything. Like if I don't have a structure of like, okay, at this time I'm going to go for a walk, or at this time I'm going to get on the spin bike, or at this time it's really hard to you know what I mean, to actually get yourself in a routine. And sometimes there's things that you don't need routine in, like, going for a hike. That should, like, having the structure to know you have to do something that's physical is what I'm talking about. Is like, or you have to know it's time to meditate, which is another thing that I found the benefits of meditation in Abu Dhabi. That's what I found there.
Talk more about that.
Man, dude, like, I got a taste of it when I was in Florida, but I really didn't understand the benefits until Abu Dhabi. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
we talked about being mindful in Florida for Pivio, but when I went to Abu Dhabi, that's when I actually experienced what that meant and the clarity. And I'm like, there's so many benefits from meditation, like in that, like I said, like the scatterness of my mind, of all the things, the decisions I have to make and all that, like to learn to see the thought come into your mind, and then I visually see the thought coming in and then just letting it go. Like that's how I would describe meditation, is that you can really get clear on what your intentions are for the day, for the time, for whatever's happening in your life. And you're able to take on that stress. Because like part of my learning, my habits, some of the habits that don't serve me is like stress eating, emotional eating, right? With meditation, I learned that instead of going to food, I can go to a meditation. That's what I did there. Because when we were on the fast, it was like meditation, I was able to recognize the hunger, what the hunger was about, what was it causing me? Am I starving, right? Because that's, no, I was just, like, and I feel like that's what meditation, so having the structure of underneath support of like making sure that, I get some physical activity in, I get my meditation in, the structure of my meals, like understanding the types of meals or understanding the types of food, from vegetables to, where my protein source is coming from, which is another, like the things I'm telling you, the things that I think I need support in are the things that I'm struggling with. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm finding. Like, everything that I'm sharing with you right now is like, I'm just thinking about what it is that I'm challenged with right now are all the things that I need support in,
Well, listen, what struck me the most when we first started talking, and even now, in why we wanted to manifest this podcast is because what you're struggling with is what everybody struggles with. I mean, not in the same way, right? No, most people don't go away on a 3 week immersion or 2 3 week immersions and learn how they could be structuring their lifestyle habits and how good that feels. You experienced that firsthand. And then you came back, and just like before, you came back to the reality of your life, which is 4 children,
Uh,
which is
uh,
all their activities and school and drop-offs and pickups, and your wife working full time and you're working full time, and um, it's not easy. On top of that, to say, okay, now I'm going to layer in these new lifestyle habits. Oh, and by the way, I'm eating different food that the rest of the family's not eating. And oh, by the way, I need to like make time for um, going
meditation.
on walks and doing
Yeah, yeah.
meditation. That's right. And so the practice of like kind of troubleshooting it
Mm.
is where we have started talking. And as we've been talking, we realized, wow, that's everyone. Everyone is struggling with making this a reality. And we call it a health feast because it's, I think, as your thinking on this has evolved and my thinking on this has evolved, is that, healthy lifestyle is actually an opportunity to feel good, an opportunity to live a fulfilling life. It's an opportunity to live the life that you enjoy, that you actually want to live. And so many times these changes are framed as punishments. You've experienced that. You've done that in your own life. I've experienced that. I've done that in my own. So that shift, and it doesn't mean you don't do hard things. It doesn't mean you don't do
Yeah.
hard things,
Right,
because
right, right,
you do
right.
hard things because it feels good. Actually, it feels good to push yourself to do more than you thought was possible, and to live up to that aspirational self identity that you've created for yourself. Um, that's right. Okay. So that just sums up like why we, yeah,
Why
why
this
we
creativity?
created this.
That's right.
Why we've, because what you're talking about right now, like, and that's what we need to, over time, just
Keep
continue to get
developing.
into,
That's
explore.
right.
There's so much there.
Right.
There's so much there, like so much that people are themselves dealing with. I hear your constant relationship with food, your food environment, and how you navigate that with children, your view on your body and your size, and how that plays into how you live your life, and the choices you make, and how that has evolved over time. Um, all of these things are things we're going to explore. But Poe,
I
we've been
know.
talking for a bit, so um, let's end with a couple. I want you to reflect on, we when we started this, we asked ourselves, like, you said this. You said every episode we should have an intention. We should have an intention. And I said my intention for this first episode is I want everyone to meet you. I want
Mm.
everyone to meet you, and I want everyone to learn about this this concept, this idea of how you feast on health. And then we go from there. But I ask, what do you want people to take away from this conversation, and what you're hoping to create going forward?
Well, I feel like just trying to summarize. I think my intention for this first episode was really just to share that how we evolve in our human experience. That what I knew when I was 10 isn't what I know when I was 20, isn't what I know when I'm 40. And that growth and wellness and mind, body, and spirit is something that's constantly evolving, and that I hope and pray, and my intention is that everyone gives themselves a little grace when it comes to this, because that's something that's challenging for me. It's like, that although right now it might be a challenge, that the only way through it, or the only way out of the challenge, is to actually go through the challenge, you know, and that I hope that my story is something that others can identify with and know that, you know, that we all can support each other, that it's something that I can help others support in their journey through their own health challenges, and that I hope that we, like Rock and I, with, you know, the Health Feast, can really enrich other people's lives in their health journey.
That's right.
That's it.
You know, can I just reiterate that? I think one of the reasons that we feel so strongly about this, about doing this, about having this conversation, about creating this, is because both of us have that intention. Both of us have that intention. We're like, how can we have this conversation and get this out there so that many people, you know, other people are thinking about, how do I make this work in my life? How do I take control of my health? Why is it important for me? And once I realize it's important to me, like, how do I make it a reality? Because it changes your life. It changes the trajectory of your life. It changes the way you look at yourself and what's possible for you. And if we can help facilitate that in you and me, first of all, just in the two of us, then that's amazing. Like, then
100%.
as I see you develop more skills and more confidence, and I mean, that amazes me. That fills me up. And the other thing that stuck out to me when Dr. Nicole first messaged me was, she said that you are very inspired and motivated to help others. And I want to maybe end on that. Talk to me about that. How does Poe taking control of his health, how does that then impact others?
I feel like, you know, part of my own life purpose is to help others. You know what I mean? Like, I really think when it's all said and done, you know, it's not the things that you accumulate in your life that bring you wealth. I think it's the things that you give away. You know what I mean? So if my story is to help somebody else in any way or form, whether it's something that I said or whether it's something that I did, to me, the only way that I can keep it is to give it away. So if I talk about it more, it kind of helps I help myself in that way when I talk about it and I speak from my experience of life. That's
Wonderful. Okay. I think we did it. I think that was it. I think that was it. Okay?
You're good.